Beyond Life, Death and Schizophrenia. An LSD trip report by T. Loud de Juice Main from the Actualize.org Self-Improvement Forum. I put a tab and a half of blotter under my tongue and waited. I sat on my zazen cushion facing the wall with my eyes lowered, breathing deeply. I felt shaky, as if energy was surging through me that wouldn't let me sit still comfortably. The come-up hadn't even begun yet, but the anxiety was already high. A tab and a half of this particular batch of LSD was the most I'd ever done, and on top of that, these tabs were the strongest I'd ever faced. The come-up came on strong and swift. I found myself getting higher and higher, each level higher bringing about its own fear. Each time I would break through into a higher level of consciousness, I would think to myself, there's nothing higher than this. And it was only then that it would dawn on me that I was breaking through to yet an even higher dimension. I eventually got off of my meditation cushion and sat down on my bed. It was early afternoon. I quickly glanced out the window to try and ground myself, but I couldn't ground myself in physical reality at all. A revolution was taking place within me. The LSD wasn't about to let me ignore it. I tried to play music to keep me calm, but any form of music felt distasteful, so I opted out of music. My heart raced and raced. The fear got more and more intense. I shifted my position to a seated position where my back was leaning against the wall and my feet extended in front of me. I was facing the window and I looked out at the trees and I noticed that they were no longer trees. The leaves had taken the shape of geometric patterns that extended deeply into my visual field. I felt fear from this, because I realised that reality was now radically different than it had ever been. But I put the fear out of my mind pretty quickly by surrendering as deeply as I could to the experience that was unfolding before my eyes. An energy rushed through my body, like a rapidly flowing river. The river flowed through all of the objects in the room and then to the centre of the universe. As the current got stronger, I began to feel a slight pull at my ego. Stronger and stronger it pulled at my ego until I finally let it go. It was so uncomfortable at first to feel my sense of self be pulled away and then tossed into oblivion. It had happened to me before in other psychedelic experiences, but it's a feeling I don't think I'll ever get used to. Anyhow, I realised that I existed without any sense of identity or self. I sat there on my bed, totally nobody. The revolution going full speed within me, capturing the majority of my attention. What was the revolution? I couldn't tell. It was too much for my mind to comprehend. As the current of the river got even stronger, I suddenly became one with it. Like a small bubble merging into a larger bubble, I flowed, as the cosmic river, through all the objects in my room and into my cat which was sitting on the windowsill. I flowed into my cat's tail and waved it. As the revolution within me was dying down in intensity, I began to realise that I was reaching the peak of the experience. I got off my bed and walked downstairs to sit on the couch. The TV was on, but I was too preoccupied with my inner state to even notice the outside world very much. I sat on the couch looking at nothing really, my full attention wrapped up in my deep inner state. I felt myself begin to approach madness, as I became less and less responsive to the outside world. I was leaving the outside behind entirely, and diving deeply within myself. I no longer heard sounds in the room or outside. I no longer smelt the air or felt my body temperature. I let go completely into the beyond. As the last parts of my outside attention began to slip away, a feeling that I might never come back washed over me, but I didn't fear it very much. I simply let go into the beyond. My thoughts became more and more irrelevant as I went deeper into my mind. My intellect became like a mosquito, landing on different parts of the experience trying to suck out any meaning, philosophy, wisdom that it could take back with it into the ego mind. I was so conscious, however, that I didn't care that it operated in this way. Large portions of my mind, which, I realised, are normally shrouded in darkness or unconsciousness, had now become fully conscious. Where normally the intellect would take up quite a bit of a conscious real estate, it was no longer large enough to even capture 1% of my full attention. I was deep in my own mind, and with that depth came a great compassion for all life. I saw the landscape of my mind like the stars speckled across the night sky. The darkness of space being the unconscious parts of my mind, and the little specks of light were the conscious sides. As I went deeper into my mind, there was less and less dark space and more light. At this point I began to approach schizophrenia. I saw it coming as I let go into my mind more and more. My conscious attention panicked and then rushed back to see what my body was doing in the physical world. It was like swimming to the top of the pool to make sure the waves were still okay. I immediately realised the futility of such a task. My body was sitting there, staring at the wall to my left, hands in my lap. The TV was on, the AC was running, and the house was quiet. I felt the tug to turn inward pull my attention back away from my body and deep into my mind again. I felt myself entering schizophrenia yet again, but I didn't try to stop it this time. The part of my mind which gave things meaning was now under my full conscious control. I was ascribing the deepest of meaning to everything in my experience. Even the smallest things were imbued with cosmic levels of meaning and purpose. There was no part of my experience, inner or outer, that I wasn't consciously making blissful. I gave everything so much depth and meaning that I could hardly handle the beauty I'd made. I felt like a grape that was so ripe it could pop at any moment, releasing the sweetest of juices. The deeper I went into the schizophrenia, the more images of my family discovering me staring absent-mindedly at the wall began to play in my mind. Visions of my family crying at my bedside as I was completely unresponsive played in my mind. For a moment I grieved the loss of my normal self, but just as I began to feel too sad, I dropped all human emotions and became something cosmic, something impersonal. I was now so deep in my mind that I was no longer aware of physical reality. Sounds, smells, taste, touch. I was no longer even aware of emotions or thoughts either. I found myself in the centre of the universe, as the centre of the universe. I was no longer a human being at this point. I no longer cared whether or not I ever came back to my senses. The feeling of cosmic bliss was so deep that it fulfilled me completely. If I had died in this very spot, I would have been okay with that. Nothing mattered at all. I saw that there were no mistakes in the universe. No evil. I nonchalantly witnessed the beginning of mankind. Millions of human beings sitting cross-legged on the ground. All the human beings, animals and insects serving no other purpose than to be sensors from which I observe myself from within myself, as the universal. I witnessed the first human hug, the first dance, the first song, the first death and murder. All of this pleased me to no end. I wasn't too keen on watching human history long, however, or even cosmic history. I knew everything that existed in the cosmos. Nothing was a surprise to me. One thing captured my attention more than anything else though. The fact that I was aware. I couldn't stop marvelling at the fact that I was aware. And because I was aware, I generated nothing but love. This was the most obvious thing to do. I generated love. Love as the universe itself. I didn't spend long in this schizophrenic state. I felt my ordinary consciousness begin to come back as the parts of my mind which were now well lit began to go dark again. I felt all my emotions start to come back. Then my thoughts, then my visual field came back online, then followed by my smell, taste, touch, and body consciousness. I shifted myself in my chair to appear more normal in case anyone walked in and saw me. I realised then that my ego had also begun to resurface. I thought to myself, so that's what schizophrenia is. Wow, I do not fear that. I got up from the couch and walked over to the small bathroom on the far left corner of the living room. As I walked on the carpet, I realised that the carpet was bearing the weight of my body. I saw that the carpet itself was conscious and was feeling me walk across it. I tried to walk gently and calmly as not to cause it any unnecessary suffering. I then noticed that all the inanimate objects around me were fully conscious just like I was. Inside of each thing was a deep inner experience. I flicked the light switch with great care. I used the bathroom with great care, and closed the door without slamming it. Everything had this intense cosmic meaning to it. Meaning was shining brightly from every single being in the room. I was no longer seeing the living room as the living room. I was seeing it as living eternity. I went into the kitchen and saw an orange on the counter. I picked it up and looked at it closely, and realised that what I normally referred to as the peel was actually not a peel. It was skin. The same kind of skin that I have on my body and you on yours. I looked at a banana and saw the same thing. These were living beings who could feel. I thought of them as fruit, as a means to separate myself from them, so that I could brutalise them without moral consequence within myself. I thought to myself, so then what do I eat? My intuition responded to my intellect immediately. I realised that eating these beings was necessary when it was in the service of ending suffering, hunger. I felt the floor feel the pain of my standing on it. I said to it, "Why don't you move if you're in pain?" My intuition immediately responded, "Because I love you." I was crushed by that response. I walked across the floor as gently as I could. My cat ran down the stairs and walked into the kitchen with me, carefully stepping across the floor as gracefully as it could. My cat rubbed against my leg to greet me, and I saw through the delusion that there was a self in my cat at all. All of my ideas of a relationship between my cat, our history, the ideas that my cat loves me, etc., was total delusion. I saw my cat as if it were a total stranger to me. I felt disgusted by it and I pitied the cat. I saw that it had no spiritual depth. Its life was empty of all spirit, of all depth. It was purely a bodily existence. I do not believe that I ever got over this realisation. Once I'd seen that in my cat, I could not unsee it. No, I did not use it as an excuse to neglect my cat. Instead, I saw it as an opportunity to treat my cat better. Since its existence was purely bodily, I could easily bring it joy and comfort with things like catnip, quality canned wet foods, and keeping the litter box clean, as well as water fountain cleaning and playing more often, etc. So I took up the responsibility to do these things and carried them out until his death a little over a year later. Beyond this point, nothing remarkable took place. There were a few things which I walked away with that I didn't get to mention earlier. For starters, in the bathroom I looked in the mirror and smiled at myself. I saw my teeth were rotted and brown. I was shocked by this. A Jamaican woman's voice said to me loud and clear, "You eat dead things, and you wonder why you're rotten." I left the bathroom with a strong conviction to become a vegetarian after this. As the trip came to a close, I had a vision of myself sitting on a zazen cushion in a zendo. The vision had great emotional depth. I felt a strong conviction to devote my life to becoming a monastic. 2 weeks later, I packed all of my things and moved to a Zen centre. I have lived here for 2 years currently.